Like I said, it's never been a better time to be a combat sports fan. I believe that in my heart. And when I say that, I say if you are a fan, that special kind of fan that likes all different kind of combat sports like me, it's just like dizzying how much is going on. And so brief recap, like GC and Rick were sitting here on Wednesday. They said goodbye. And that's when the fun really started. Thursday morning, we wake up and we get the news at 9 a.m. that Jake Paul is returning to action on July 20th against Mike Tyson. Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, real fight happening on July 20th. That's item number one. Item number two is they're fighting at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. In front of, it hasn't been decided. They're working on it right now, I'm told, in terms of what the configuration will be, but it's going to be somewhere in the 65 to 80,000 range as far as spectators. Absurd. There's been a couple of fights there, Pacquiao, Canelo, etc. This is absurd. Item number three, which I feel like has been completely lost, and I understand why. There's a 30-year age gap. It's Tyson, it's Jake Paul, it's AT&T Stadium, all that. I'm as intrigued by item number three, which is it's live on Netflix. No pay-per-view. If you're a Netflix subscriber, and they have 260 million approximately subscribers around the world, available in every country. If you're already a subscriber, which most people that I meet, including myself and the team here, are subscribers, you get it for free, meaning you don't have to pay extra. It's not like you have to pay $50 on top of whatever it costs, $13, $11, I don't know what it is, to be a subscriber. The amount of people that are going to watch this fight is going to be arguably the most amount of people to ever watch a live combat sports event. I don't think that's a stretch because of the subscribers, because of it being available to everyone via the same platform. Fascinating. We know about WWE getting in bed with Netflix starting January of 2025. Here they come, Jake Paul, MVP, Nikisa, up first. They've dabbled in live sports. They had a golf event. My understanding is this was signed November 1st. So I saw some people saying like, oh, you know, they're following in WWE's footsteps. Actually, my understanding was, you know, and I don't know when WWE's deal was signed, but for the record, what I was told was it was signed November 1st. So that's before Andre August and before Ryan Borland. Perhaps that gives some sort of understanding and explanation as to why those fights were made if this was signed on November 1st for July 20th. So that's, you know, the first thing that happened, and we'll get into that, I can assure you. Thursday night, PFL Paris, like I said, 1-1, Doumbé Baki, get into the third round. All of a sudden, Doumbé is talking to Marc Goddard, the referee. Then he's talking to Baki. Baki's talking to him. Then he's talking to Marc Goddard. The fight is called off. And in the moment, you're like, what the hell just happened? Then after the interviews and the post-fight stuff and all that, we come to find out that he has a splinter in his toe. He says he told Goddard there's a splinter. He says he told Baki there was a splinter. Baki tells him, so remove it. He tells Goddard something. Goddard says the fight is off. Crazy ending. We thought we saw it all. Apparently there's more to be seen. And so the fight is off, and it's a loss for Doumbé. Can't call timeout. Did he in fact call a timeout? I didn't see it, but maybe he said it. He says he didn't say it. Crazy stuff. Massive crowd. Biggest crowd ever for a mixed martial arts event in France, and now we suspect they're going to run it back. I mean, if this was a ho-hum weekend and that's the biggest story, we could do an hour on that story alone. Earlier in that evening, we get the face-off, irresistible force, immovable object, Francis Ngannou versus AJ. The amount of people that told me that I was wrong about the irresistible force line, it's like, it just shows there's so many new fans, and there's nothing wrong with being a new fan, but you can't correct someone if you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Irresistible force, immovable object is Gorilla Monsoon, WrestleMania 3, March of 1987, Pontiac Silverdome. That's what he said when Hogan and Andre walked towards each other in the ring. You think I would get that wrong? I would never get that wrong. Are you insane? I would never get that wrong. No, it's unstoppable force. What the fuck is that? I don't even know who you're quoting. Are you just making things up? No, it's irresistible force, immovable object, Gorilla Monsoon, the late great. I would never get that wrong. Anyway, they end up fighting on Friday. What an experience that was. Kingdom Arena in Riyadh. Obviously, I was there. I could do an hour on that experience alone. Long event, memorable event. Gile Zhang, Joseph Parker, fascinating stuff. Thought Gile had him. Parker wins, co-main event. Great performances throughout. Main event, Francis Ngannou, Anthony Joshua. We had never seen Francis Ngannou rocked. We had never seen Ngannou hit with clean shots like that. We had never seen him knocked down before. Not only did we see that, we saw it not once, but twice. And then the third shot was the finisher, knocked out cold. Scary knockout. Shades of Francis Stipe 2. The knee buckles, falls back. Never seen France like this. Out cold, oxygen. Second round, Anthony Joshua is back. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. Now in line for Tyson versus Usyk. But of course, we have the stupid rematch clauses. So who knows when we're going to see that fight, because Tyson keeps saying, told me multiple times last week in person, regardless of who wins, there's a rematch clause. So if they're going to fight again May and then October, we're not seeing AJ versus the winner of this fight until 2025, which is absurd because he's on a roll. Does he fight someone else? Who knows? We'll wait to see. But there's so much there, right? From our perspective, it's what does Francis do now? What does he do now? I think the PFL was the big winner on Friday. He goes back to MMA. He fights Renan Ferreira and resumes that, gets his mojo back. If he wins that fight in impressive fashion, perhaps he thinks about boxing again. But for now, I think we have to put a pin in the boxing dreams because that was just so devastating. Oh, by the way, it was so devastating, he's going to need some time. They want him to come back in the summer. Is that enough time? That's in 4 months. July, August, 4 or 5 months. Is that enough time after a knockout like that? Says he didn't feel it. It was like it was shot out of a cannon. This was the best version of AJ we've ever seen. And yeah, you could say he was fighting a quote-unquote debutante or a novice. Still, he did that to Francis Ngannou, who has never been knocked down or rocked or knocked out with 4-ounce gloves. He did that in a boxing match. It was insane to see. It was insane. I thought I was hallucinating. It was 4 a.m. local time. It was wild. And so what does this mean for the story of AJ, and what does it mean for the story of Francis? We'll get into that. Now, we get on a plane, we make the journey from Riyadh to London to New York City. We get there in time for the prelims to start. I'm following along some of it in the air, get home as Jailton Almeida and Curtis Blades are making the walk. And what a fight that was, and what a card it was. Top of the bill, Sean O'Malley beats Chito Vera, like I said, 5 rounds to none. Co-main event, Dustin Poirier knocks out BST, asserts himself as the man once again at 155 and still a player. BST will be back, no problem. Shades of maybe GSP and Matt Hughes. Maybe a little too soon. He'll be back. I have no doubt about that. Michael Venom Page with the incredible debut against Kevin Holland. And let this be a lesson to anyone out there who is fighting a free agent signing. If you're going to disparage and try to quote-unquote insult your opponent and say that he's lesser than you and that he's a Bellator fighter or a PFL fighter or a KSW fighter or a Cage Warriors fighter and that you are the elite because you've been in the UFC for several years, if you lose to that guy, especially in, somewhat one-sided fashion, it doesn't reflect very good on you. Paul Heyman told me a long time ago, build up your opponent so that when you beat him, it makes you seem like the man. If you call your opponent a bum leading up to it and not on your level, and then you lose in very one-sided fashion, what does that make you? It's not very smart. It's not very smart. In any event, very impressive win for Michael Venom Page, and I'm curious to see where he goes from here. Petr Yan with an impressive win as well against Song Yadong. Great stuff from him. I really thought he looked great, and especially when you consider how much was at stake, and he hadn't fought in a year, and he's trying to get back on track. What about Jack Della Maddalena? It wasn't looking good. Great clip of GC and Mike Heck watching on the watch party. Everyone was like, okay, this is probably going to be done. And then all of a sudden he reverses things and starts landing knees and elbows and ground and pound. And I thought the fight went a little bit too long. Gilbert took too much damage. And JDM continues his undefeated ways, and in the UFC, that is, and is now calling out Shavkat Rakhmonov. The ball's on this guy. Curtis Blades beats Jailton Almeida. Macy Barber beats Caitlin Saraminara. I'm still not quite 100% sure on that one. I know it's Chukagian, but she's got the new last name because she's married now. Mateusz Gamrot with a very impressive win hard-fought win over RDA. Kyler Phillips looked great. Felipe Lins looked great. Michel Pereira looks fantastic against Michal Oleksiejczuk. What about Robles Despain with the 18-second knockout in his debut? Joanne Wood, like I said. So there's just Oh my God, Suga with the win, and where he goes from here, and he calls out Ilya, and then he says Marab, and we see the thing with Marab in the background. BSD, I mean, that's everything that happened in a 10-minute stretch. And usually I like to sit here once again and wax poetic, but there's just so much. There's so much. We could do 3 hours just talking about all of this stuff. My head is still spinning. And so let me bring in the guys here and ask them the question that I think I asked a couple of weeks ago, but now it's an even tougher question to answer. And that question is, gentlemen, hello.
Hello.
What was the biggest story of the weekend? What was the biggest? What is front page, story one, A1, the biggest story of the weekend? Because I'm assuming you both agree. I have not asked you. There's legit 3 to 4, maybe 5 contenders. Legit. There's a very good chance that both of you say 299 related things, and Francis doesn't even get talked about in the first 30 minutes of the show. That's absurd. We did a whole 3-hour show just on Francis almost beating Tyson Fury. And so, Rick, I'll start with you. Biggest story of the weekend. What is it? Because honestly, right now, sitting here, I don't even know what my answer is. Perhaps you're going to sway me. I don't even know what my answer is.
Netflix broadcasting live combat.
Wow, off the grid, Rick.
That's the one.
Left field. See, okay, so let's talk about that just very briefly. Are you surprised that was almost completely overshadowed?
No, because the absurdity, the magnitude of the idea of combining Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, should have that impact, and that's the impact that they wanted for it. And to me, it had the effect that they desired. So I'm not surprised that kind of overshadows it, but parceled in with that, Netflix, part of your subscription, broadcasting live fights is going to have reverberations that I think will be felt for a long time. So for me, the last time we did this, you asked me, and I picked something that I thought had big reverberations for the sport and for the business throughout. I, again, am thinking business. Netflix broadcasting live combat sports is massive.
In a word or two, Paul Tyson, in or out?
In. Completely in, totally.
Wow, this is the second shocker of the day. Why? Tell me.
I mean, I don't think it's any secret how I felt about Jake Paul versus Andre August and Jake Paul versus Ryan Borland.
Yes.
Jake Paul is one of the few combat sports influencers or combat sports personalities or combat sports athletes, whatever title you want to assign to him, who can create big fights. No disrespect to anybody else, but the level of star power, the ability to carry an event that he has is different than many others. There's very few in his league when it comes to that. And so wasting those opportunities against people who I don't want to see him fight feels like a misstep for me. And I would rather see him hosting an event where he is fighting in Cowboy Stadium, AT&T Stadium, on Netflix against Mike Tyson, a name that we all know, than the alternative path for him. So yes, I'm all in. And I think everybody else in the world is going to be watching, whether you are a fan of the booking, whether you're not, whether you want to take the angle of being concerned about Mike Tyson's age, which is a completely appropriate and valid kind of point to be pushing. But this is what I would rather see from somebody who can put on events like this.
2 quick follow-ups, and then we go to GC. Number one, they're still working on a few important details based on the conversations that I've had. Is it pro or is it exhibition? They want pro. Obviously, that's up to the Texas Commission.
Yep.
We'll wait and see. Weight, I'm told heavyweight, rounds working on that as well. I saw an interview with Derek Chisora where he said there'll be headgear. I was told there's absolutely no headgear involved. This is going to look like your typical boxing match. It's just exhibition like Mike's last fight was against Roy Jones in November of 2020? Or is it just, a normal pro heavyweight fight that has no strings attached in that regard? So that's one thing. I did think it was super interesting that, and this is the second point before we go to UGC, it seems like the same people who were complaining that, or criticizing, or taking shots, whatever you want to say, that Jake Paul sucks, that he's not impressive, that he fights cab drivers and he can't beat anyone, and that he's crazy for thinking that he can do this, and that he's living a fantasy bubble. It seems like the same people who won't stop talking about how bad Jake Paul is as a boxer are now all of a sudden extremely worried that he's going to kill Mike Tyson, and that he's killing, a legend, and that this is unsafe, and that this is cruel, and that this is this, that, and the other. How could it be both? you can't in one breath say this guy sucks and is a bum and has no business stepping in the ring against anyone, and then in the second breath say he is going to kill a 57-year-old man. You either think that this is a guy who is good, or you think that this is a guy who is a bum. The bum can't be the guy that you're afraid of killing, a guy like Mike Tyson, who I know is 57, and you could feel very strongly about a 27-year-old fighting a 57-year-old. On paper, yes, that is jarring. That jumps out at you right away. But 2 days ago, you were saying he was a bum. Now you're worried he's going to kill Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson can hold his own against a bum or a novice, in my opinion. I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm trying to make sense of it all, and the rounds and pro exhibition, all that stuff will help sway me one way or the other. But I did find that juxtaposition of thoughts and feelings to be very interesting. For you, GC. Okay, yes.
Just one thing on that. It comes from a place of what they want to see is somebody kill Jake Paul, right? They've eliminated two alternatives, right? They've eliminated, is he going to face somebody commensurate with his level of boxing experience, which would be the Ryan Borland, Andre August level person? Or is he going to fight somebody like Mike Tyson or Anderson Silva or somebody in that vein where maybe they're past the shelf life, but a bigger name and somebody who's capable in the ring? What they really want to see is Jake Paul face rising top prospect who's 2 away from a title opportunity in boxing, just kill him. That's actually what they want to see and ask for, is for the Jake Paul experiment to be over. But in reality, that's not the fights that Jake Paul should be fighting in. That is useless. Like, again, to the point, Jake Paul is in this industry to be making big events happen. I don't care about Jake Paul as a boxer. That's not interesting to me, because then he's like everybody else. The moment he becomes a boxer, the more and more he becomes a boxer, he's boring. He becomes uninteresting. The interesting part of Jake Paul is putting on fights like this that come out of fantasy world, where all of a sudden Mike Tyson and Jake Paul are fighting on Netflix. That is the interest of Jake Paul. That is what Jake Paul should always be chasing. And so I don't think that's coming from a place where they actually are concerned about like what Jake Paul should actually be doing, and more just want to see him lose, which at the same time, I think helps him, to be honest, because those same people who want that are also going to be watching him fight Mike Tyson.
Not only will they be watching, they'll be doing YouTube videos and breaking it down,
reacting
all
to
leading
it and
up,
all that. Yep.
all post, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, GC, you're up. Biggest story.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this. I mean, it's almost impossible not to go with Dustin Poirier knocking out Benoit Saint-Denis.
Wow. Both
the
of you
almost
off the
forgot.
grid.
Not off the grid. I'm agreeing with Rick. Not just the
wow.
Netflix part, though. The entirety of it. Jake Paul is fighting Mike Tyson. He is in a higher age than we normally see people boxing, at going to be 58 on fight day, is just an insane storyline in and of itself. They're going to be fighting at Cowboy Stadium. Whatever seating amount that they end up going with, I feel like they're going to sell that out. We saw the sellout crowd in Dallas last time against Nate Diaz. Mike Tyson's drawing power is larger than Nate Diaz's, especially if this is a professional bout. Cowboy Stadium in and of itself is crazy. And then number 3, the Netflix. It's just all 3 of them. And like, it took me a while to digest, to really be like, wow, this is actually going to happen. And like, all 3 of these things are insane. And I think it's going to reach just a ridiculous amount of people. I was getting hit up by people that don't watch combat sports. What are your thoughts on this? How is this happening? I was listening to podcasts that never talk about combat sports. Jake Paul is going to fight Mike Tyson. You turn on ESPN, First Take, Stephen A. Smith is talking about Jake Paul fighting Mike Tyson. Like, when it finally comes to fight day, the event actually happening, whether you love it, hate it, whatever, I strongly believe you are going to be watching. I think this is going to draw a ridiculous amount of eyes. I think it's just going to be a monumental event. So it feels like it happened 2 years ago, because it happened on Thursday morning before Doumbé, before Ngannou, before 299. But I still think that is the biggest storyline coming out of the weekend.
Wow. Both of you have surprised me greatly. I wasn't really sure what you were going to say. And so for the sake of this, I'm not going to just add to that. Again,
I like it. You go a different
Well, I don't have really an answer, because I think you could make a very strong case for 3 things. I mean, O'Malley's win was gigantic. He's one of the biggest stars in the sport, blown away by the $14 million gate in Miami, a place that they told us for years they couldn't sell tickets. It continues to blow me away. Like, again, I always use this as an example. I went out for dinner with my nephews yesterday. You know, my nephew is in 10th grade, and he told me that UFC is now or MMA is now his second favorite sport, rivaling NFL. A year ago, he doesn't even know anything about it, and he's like, all his friends are watching, and they love Sean, and they know who MVP is now, and they're watching Dustin, and it's just the growth of the sport. I mean, it's amazing to me that they're like, look at the celebs in attendance, and it's Mr. Beast and Logan Paul and KSI and Aiden fucking Ross. Like, these are the celebs. It used to be George Clooney and Brad Pitt and Shaquille O'Neal, and these are the people. And that's no knock on them. It's just everything is younger. Everything is like the UFC is on fire, and Sean is the perfect face for all of that. He connects with, the Nelk boys. He connects with the YouTube generation, the Snapchat generation. He's just perfect. And of course, everyone's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Everyone's waiting for him to stumble. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, all right, let's see him fight a guy like Petr Yan. It's a big difference between, Pedro Munoz or Chris Moutinho and Petr Yan. He beats Petr Yan. And it was close. And maybe you want to make a case that he didn't win the fight, but it was pretty damn close. Then he comes back and beats Aljamain Sterling. That was supposed to be the tough one. Then he comes back and beats Cheeto, a guy who beat him, right? And he doesn't just beat him by the skin of his teeth. 5 rounds to none. Oh, big deal. He didn't finish him. I know he was upset about that. Big deal. 5 rounds to none. Hit him with everything in the kitchen sink. So what a story. What a story DP is. What a story MVP is. I think I have to go with Francis, if only because it touches so many different touch points. Francis Tyson Fury back in October was one of the greatest spectacles we have ever seen. And for a lot of people, one of the most shocking results we've ever seen, even though he didn't win, just what he did to Tyson Fury. And of course, now the revisionist history is he didn't, fight the best Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury ate Tyson Fury. He didn't take it seriously, blah, 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 blah. Anyone going into that fight would have said a 50% Tyson Fury smokes Francis. So don't take that away from him. Don't let the Joshua result take anything away from Francis. Of course, people will do that. That's fine. Comes back and you say, wow, if he can beat Anthony Joshua, a rejuvenated, resurging Anthony Joshua, he's now fighting for undisputed gold in what would be his third pro fight. Incredible. And he seemed so confident and so at ease, so relaxed all week. And Joshua was tense and didn't talk to us before the fight. Only fighter who didn't let us go into the locker room, all that stuff. So you're like, oh my gosh, is he going to crumble? Is he not all the way back? Is he not all the way there? Is he not who he once was? And he comes out and does that. He puts the exclamation point. He's like, you don't even think about going toe-to-toe with an Olympic gold medalist, with a former 2-time unified champ. Knockdown in the first, 2 knockdowns, knockout in the second. And it was never even close. It was never even close. And just to see Francis in that state was shocking. And so then there's the trickle-down effect, right? Are we finally going to get AJ versus Fury? Are we going to get AJ Usyk 3? For this audience, I know you care a little bit more about MMA. Where does Francis go from here? I think he has to go back to PFL and go down that route. I think he has to do that. But I think that there's a lot of people, on Friday and Saturday who were trying to dunk on Francis, who were trying to insult Francis. Again, yes, this is what should have happened against Tyson. It didn't happen. And that's why he was able to get this opportunity. And then it happened against a very good, like I said, rejuvenated Anthony Joshua, the best version of Anthony Joshua that we've seen in years, with the best team around him, in the best mental space. I was so impressed with AJ. I was so impressed with him all week and in the aftermath. And I wrote this on Twitter, and I'll expand on it real quickly. He kept it real the whole time. Gimmick promotions comes from AJ. AJ was the one that said this would be a gimmick fight. And so they used that as like a rallying cry. And he had no intentions of fighting Francis before the Fury fight and even after the Fury fight. Remember, he signed to fight Deontay Wilder. He signed to fight Deontay Wilder before the Otto Wallin fight. He did the job. He beat Wallin. Wilder didn't do the job. Wilder lost to Joseph Parker. And so now he's presented with another opportunity to close out Riyadh's season against Francis, who at that point was the hottest commodity in combat sports. And so he takes the fight. And all throughout, he didn't disparage Francis. He didn't try to diminish him. Take note, Kevin Holland. He said, no, I was impressed. I didn't think he was worthy, but I was impressed. And so I'm going to take this seriously. And I'm going to watch his MMA fights. And Ben Davison said the same. I'm going to watch his MMA fights, and we're going to take this extremely seriously because this is the fight that gets us the undisputed gold. And you could see how seriously he took it just looking at the performance, looking at his state, his mental state, his physical state, and then the performance itself. But then even when he does it, arguably his most thrilling win ever and one of the greatest knockouts you'll see in heavyweight boxing, he doesn't celebrate. He almost seems bashful about it. Like, yeah, okay, I did that. Now can I move on? Hardly even calls anyone out. Seems very concerned about Francis, says he wants to help him, team up with him, help him with his foundation. He kept it real the whole time. He didn't say it was a shitty fight and then celebrate like he had just won, the Super Bowl. Tommy Fury did that leading up to the Jake Paul fight and then started crying when he beat him. No, you told us he was a bum. You can't act like it was the greatest thing in the world in the aftermath. He kept it real the entire time. He said it was ain't no thing before, and he acted like it was ain't no thing afterwards. And I really respect that about him. For Francis, it's a step back in the sense that he can't continue this boxing journey, but it's not a step back in the sense that he probably made around 20 million for that fight, let alone the 10 to 20, 15 or so for the first fight. So we're talking like what, 35, 40? And now he goes back to MMA probably. Like all of this was a huge, huge win. All of this was a gigantic win. But as far as his journey of becoming a boxing champion and that next step and allowing this Cinderella story to live on, it has to stop here. Because you can't take a fight against a Chisora or a White or an Otto Wallin, a lesser heavyweight, and risk losing that because now you're affecting your MMA legacy. I don't think his MMA spot, his legacy, his star power, his drawing power has been affected. But if you lose another one like that against lesser competition, now we're talking about affecting your brand. And so let me ask you guys that. Your thoughts on what you saw on Friday night. Francis gets knocked out brutally. AJ moves on in this mini tournament. I don't think it hurts Francis in the sense that I know a lot of people want to say like, oh my God, he sucks. He screwed up this or that. He like we say, he dared to dream. He dared to be great. He went down the impossible path. No one thought he would even get to this point. But I think now it's imperative he goes back to MMA. He goes back to the PFL. He dusts off La Problema. And then we could revisit this in mid-2025 or so. We can't continue the boxing stuff now. Do you agree, Rick?
I agree from the perspective that the boxing stuff is diminished, and that's why I say it definitely hurts him to a certain capacity, right? Because if he looked even competitive in this fight, I think he could have kept rolling. I think you could have easily done more heavyweight boxing fights. You could have easily slid right into a Tyson Fury rematch at some point. Not that I think that's completely off the table anyway, but the boxing train could have kept rolling. Now I think it's very clear, like, if he has one more and loses it, that has to be it. I would be okay if he left it now. But what I saw on Saturday was on Friday was a man who now has no regrets, right? If Francis Ngannou had just gone to PFL and done that, left the UFC, he never would have scratched this itch. He never would have gotten the thing that he had dreamed about for so long when he was a kid. He never would have gotten this opportunity, and now he did it. I'm sure he's extremely disappointed by the result. I'm sure that's a tough pill to swallow. But I don't think he looks himself in the mirror and goes, man, I really wish I tried. He did try. He got 2 boxing fights already, and maybe there's more to come, against 2 of the best heavyweights of our era, including Tyson Fury, who I think is the best heavyweight of our era. So he's a man that I think won the game. Now, again, every time we say this, every time we talk about that, it feels like people will say that you're making excuses for Francis Ngannou's failures. No, he failed in the ring. He lost brutally, and it was not a successful night for Francis Ngannou. But when you think about where he's come from, when you think about the money he was able to generate, the generational wealth he's now providing for his family, and also the idea that this is what he dreamed of. He made his literal dreams come true. It's hard to look at it as a failure. Even though the result was a failure, no doubt. It's not excusing what happened in the ring. He had a bad performance and got knocked out for it. But everything else was making a dream come true. As far as going to MMA, I actually think it helps him in a certain capacity, which is that he now seems vulnerable. I think the fight with Renan Ferreira now becomes more even. People will start to look at it and go, yeah, maybe this 7-foot giant with huge power can clip him. Maybe he can do what AJ did. Maybe he can just put him out. And I think that actually helps. I think it's more compelling as a fight than if Francis Ngannou had just been out here like slaying boxing heavyweights and then comes back and nobody's interested in the potential MMA fight. Assuming that Renan Ferreira is his next fight, I actually think it helps a little bit. He seems vulnerable. It seems like if there was ever a time to get Francis Ngannou for a guy like Renan Ferreira, it seems like it's now, and I think that helps sell an MMA fight.
What was your reaction when you saw GC?
Stunned. I mean, no doubt. It's what you said. We've never seen him rocked, wobbled, knocked down, knocked out. And just to see him get put on his ass like that and then knocked down again and then just absolutely folded, like the knee, the down, the oxygen, he's not getting up. I mean, it was stunning to see. It was just such an incredible performance by AJ. And I actually agree with Rick's point. That was the point that I was going to make is, I think he needs to go back to MMA now because – Who is he going to match up with in boxing at this point? I know a lot of people calling for the Deontay Wilder fight. Like any heavyweight, there's going to be a large chance of what happened against AJ being recreated, and then you are so far out of the boxing game at that point. If you go into another boxing match and you get iced out in less than 2 rounds and it's just a complete walk in the park for the other opponent, then you're completely out of the boxing game. I think you go back, you go to the PFL, you fight Renan Ferreira coming off this beautiful knockout in like 20 seconds. He seems like this scary, intimidating monster. And the amount of tweets that I saw that were like, Francis Ngannou is going to go back to the PFL and Renan Ferreira is going to end his career and like yada, yada, yada. I'm with Rick. He seems vulnerable right now. That image is not going to get out of people's head of the knee folding back over, him just being completely put out, and the image of Renan Ferreira just making it look easy against Ryan Bader. And there's going to be intrigue. It's going to be Francis Ngannou is not young. It's going to be, does he still have it? Can he come back to MMA and win fights, or is he completely done? If he gets KO'd by Renan Ferreira in the first round, where does he go from there? The questions are going to be endless at that point. So I definitely think we go back to PFL. It's a great fight. People will be intrigued by it. We want to see him back in MMA and see what he's still got. And I can't wait for it. I think you take some time off, obviously, after a knockout like that, and then you come back. And just by the way, just looking at the odds with how many people I saw, talking about Renan Ferreira, Francis Ngannou minus 650 on DraftKings Sportsbook against Renan Ferreira right now.
Yeah, they have to wait. They have to, wait for him to be 100% because Francis still has incredible value, I think, to PFL, and you don't want him to get starched in the first round because, look what we just saw with Alex Volkanovski. Knockouts can change people. That was 3 knockdowns, pretty bad ones, and I would say probably after the second he was done. And in retrospect,
sure.
I kind of wish that the third never happened. I had the privilege of being around all week, and I got to see Dewey Cooper and Eric Nixick and Markel Martin. I wasn't there in October, and I have no problem saying that as like a member of the MMA community, if you want to say that. Like I took great pride in seeing these guys who we typically see on Saturdays in the UFC, meaning extreme couture guys, corner guys. I was like, man, look at these freaking guys halfway across the world doing their thing, dressing like they want to dress, saying what they want to say, wearing the getup, all that stuff. I was like, this is freaking great. Good for them. And they couldn't have been more relaxed, more confident, more at ease. And I was confident too. Ultimately, did I know it was going to happen? No, but I thought Francis would make a good account of himself. And I thought that he had a chance to win, considering what we've seen from AJ in the past against guys who can punch, and considering the fact that the Robert Heleniuses of the world rocked him and the Andy Ruizes of the world rocked him, et cetera, et cetera. It didn't happen. But like, that's not, even on the broadcast, they were taking like some subtle shots at me afterwards. Like, oh, people talk about the elbows and the kicks and all that stuff, which I had been saying all week long. It's like, yeah, that's what makes this so fucking shocking, because we've seen him. And I know he's not fighting guys who are doing, spinning back kicks and stuff. He's fighting Stipe and he's fighting, Derek Lewis and whatnot. But still, he's fighting heavyweights in MMA with 4-ounce gloves. And we've never seen him ever get rocked. Never seen him get rocked, let alone knocked down, let alone knocked out. So it was shocking, and it was like, it was hard to find the words in the moment. But my takeaway was the better man won. AJ is a force. This might be the best version of him we've ever seen, and I can't wait to see him fight the winner of Fury Usyk. And there's a part of me that hopes it's Fury, so we can finally see that stuff, that fight. And I hope that if they do make that fight, that it happens somewhere in England, Wembley, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That would sell out in 0.00001 seconds. Here are my thoughts on my trip to Riyadh. I would be lying to the audience if I didn't tell you that I was trepidatious going there. I was nervous, the fear of the unknown. Obviously, it's not a great time for my people in the Middle East right now. Obviously, anti-Semitism is at an all-time high. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was walking into, going to experience, etc. And I say this without anyone telling me to say X, Y, or Z. It couldn't have been a more pleasant experience in that every single person, from the cab drivers, from the people at the hotel, to the people at the venue, to the fans, to the people that I worked with, everyone was so extremely kind and nice, welcoming, warm, grateful that we're there, pleasant, polite. It was really a nice experience, and I didn't know what to expect. I've been to Egypt before. I've obviously been to Israel. I'd never been to Saudi Arabia. I had no idea what to expect. And it was a lovely, lovely, lovely experience. No one put me in a uncomfortable position. No one told me to say X, Y, or Z. No one tried to force anything upon me. Did the job, came home. It was great. And they couldn't have been more welcoming. And that's really, what I had heard going into things. I talked to so many people. I had to experience it for myself. And I'm very grateful and happy that I went. And I would be open to going in the future. The place is evolving, the country is evolving, and it's going to be really interesting to see where they are in 10 to 15 years. That being said, I do think they have to figure out how to get more fans to come to these events, and also the time slot that they're doing the events is great for us here in America and also in England, the rest of Europe, but it's tough to have an event of that magnitude, a fight of that magnitude at 3:30 in the morning. And so there are things that they have to work out. There are things that they have to figure out. But overall, it was unlike. It reminded me to a degree of when we went to Abu Dhabi in 2010 for UFC 112, and Abu Dhabi and Dubai have evolved so much since then. 14 years later, I suspect in 14 or so years, Saudi Arabia, they can't. You're not allowed to drink in Saudi Arabia right now. There's still a lot that has to happen for them to maybe get to where Abu Dhabi or Dubai is, and I don't know if that's where they want to be. But I will say, the people were all, just couldn't have been more welcoming, and never did I feel uneasy or unwelcome or anything like that. So if you were wondering what my thoughts were, and trust me, there was a lot of. I'm a pretty nervous and anxious person. There was a lot of that. The crew knows that as well, but I didn't feel one iota of that. And so I'm curious, where they go from here with this. Obviously, we know about May 18th. We know about June 1st. We know about the UFC event in June as well. What does this all look like in 2 years, in 3 years? What does it look like in 5 to 10 years? Is it still going to be as big of a thing? So that's in addition to all of this, that's another story that we're watching unfold in the world of combat sports. So I'm curious to see where Francis goes from here. We certainly know where Anthony Joshua goes from here. The big question is, does he fight someone else while waiting for Fury Usyk to do the dance twice?
No, please no.
I would agree, but now we're talking about a guy who has benefited greatly from fighting 4 times in the span of 11 months, as opposed to someone who now you're probably waiting a year, right? By the time those two guys fight twice, it's probably next March or so when he could fight again. So you're doing the exact obvious. You're doing the exact opposite. Excuse me. Maybe you fight Francis in PFL? No.
Have a fight in the gym. Close the doors. Do something else. Absolutely do not sacrifice the potential for this matchup.
Fair.
We cannot lose it.
I will say this though. Yes, I agree with that. For Francis, even though I want to see him go back to MMA, I would be open if he gets by Fajeda, the Wilder fight after that. I would be open to that.
In boxing?
Both. Either or.
I'm good with it.
Problema first.
I'd rather
you built it as the winner of Problema versus Bader. You have to have the payoff, and also for PFL, Amanda Serrano, Jake Paul, Francis Ngannou, Savannah Marshall, all these people that they've announced, none of them have fought. One of them has to fight. So for them and their credibility, someone needs to fight.
If a better option walked in the door tomorrow, I'd take that over Renan Ferreira.
There is
problem.
But there is none.
Okay, that's a reality that I can accept.
But do you agree that there is none right now?
If Deontay Wilder said, "Hey, I saw you get flatlined by AJ. I'm going to fight you in MMA." Sorry, Renan. Next.
Yeah. But it just goes to show again, like people were saying, Francis is never going to fight in MMA. Like we have to wait for these stories to play out. You have to. People want to be so quick to plant their flag into different ideologies. Same way with what people were saying when he left the UFC, when he signed the Tyson fight, the week of the Tyson fight, after the Tyson fight. Like, just wait to see how the stories play out before being so certain about everything.
Yeah, it felt like being reactionary was at an all-time high this weekend with the Doumbé, everyone talking about, oh, yeah, you guys really thought UFC fumbled the bag with him? Like, look at him now. And then Ngannou, it's just like, oh, now look at him. He's a failure. He's a loser. And then everything that happened on 299. I mean, I had someone tell me they were like, there's no coming back from picking BSD. Like, what a ridiculous pick. It's just like, man, the like hindsight is always 2020, I guess.
The pitchforks would have been out for MVP if he chose that one side.
Bellator fighter.
I wouldn't have wanted to be on that side.
Had he lost, the reactionary takes on Twitter would have been just incredible.
Bellator fighter, yeah. More often than not, it does seem like the guys who come over, and we'll see how Kayla Harrison does on April 13th. It does seem like they do succeed. Chandler succeeded.
It's almost like they're very good.
Yeah, it's almost like that.
It's almost like they're quite good fighters. It's almost like Patchy Mix probably could come over and be a really good bantamweight, But
did Mark Goddard get it right, Rick?
That's a very loaded question because by the letter of the law, of course, he got it right. Right? Like the within the rules, within the confines of what the rules are trying to express, he got it right. But I would ask, and this point was raised by super producer Casey and made me think, in the case of like, let's say, tape on the glove, right? There's not a timeout, right? It's not a full timeout. It's not, hey, return to your neutral corner and we're going to sort this out. But they'll take 30 seconds, they'll cut the tape off and they'll continue the fight. Same thing for dropped mouthpiece or whatever the case may be, right? The referee takes a brief timeout and is able to rectify the situation. I don't see why that couldn't have been applied in this case, right? Like, I think the biggest thing for me is the fact that it was the speed with it which Mark Goddard ran in the second time to call the fight. I don't think that was necessary. It could have been slower, right? There could have been what's going on? Let me assess the situation and figure out what's happening. In that moment, he could have then said, oh, Doumbé's got a foreign object in his foot. We're going to take it out and we're going to resume the fight. Second to that is the fact that Doumbé and Baki were both standing there staring at each other. Nobody was in mortal peril, right? Nobody was in danger of being severely hurt. And the idea of, I'm stopping this fight because I believe you're injured could have been assessed better, right? Could have heard from Doumbé, could have decided, okay, now you actually are hurt after having this conversation and figuring out what's going on, and then TKO, right? If at the end of this investigation, at the end of this momentary conversation, you decide, actually, he is hurt and we're going to stop the fight here, that's fine. But there didn't seem to be any concern for figuring out what the right thing to do in the situation was and more sticking to what the letter of the law is. And that to me feels like an error, or that the law needs to be amended in a certain capacity. It's not the outcome anybody wanted. I'm not raising a pitchfork. I'm not, up in arms about what Mark Goddard did, but I do feel it was a suboptimal solution. It did not feel like the best solution in that scenario.
I'm looking forward to talking to him. Obviously, we'll talk to him at 3:45. The only thing that I feel like we can nitpick, in my opinion, yes, you can't call timeout, and you can't stop, and you have to always defend yourself, and you have to engage and all that stuff. I just sort of wish, and I'd love to know if this happened when we speak to him, was there a warning, a stern warning? Hey, man, if you don't start fighting, I'm going to call this off. If you don't stop talking to me or him about this, I'm going to call this off. And I just feel like it all happened so quickly. Like,
yes.
You know what I mean? Push him aside and be like, yo, man, I don't give a fuck about your toe. Fight. And if you don't fight, I'm going to do this. It just seemed like, oh, wait, you're talking about, it's over. It's over. Nope, you're complaining. It's done. That was my interpretation. And I'd love to hear from him. And, we'll see what Mark Goddard has to say about it as well. But, it just felt a smidge too fast.
Too
Like a
fast.
smidge for sure. Like it wasn't like Doumbé was like, "Yo, time out, guys. I'm tired, man. Like, let me get a break." Like he's like, "There is something in my foot. I want to know. Like, I really want to know how it got there. Like, how do you get a splinter in the middle of this octagon? It could have happened to anyone. It's not like he like was calling a timeout because he had a calf cramp or because like his leg was broken or something like that. He was actually injured. Like this was a foreign object in his foot. And I'm with you. Like I wish Goddard had been like, can you fight or can you not fight? You need to tell me right now, yes or no. And that should have been the deciding factor. And from what I've gotten from the post-fight, it felt like Baki was like, "Oh, you've got a splinter in your foot? Like, all right, just take it out."
Yes.
Like, it's just almost just like, "Yo, get him a stool, take it out, and
Let's
continue
continue.
the fight." Like, it feels like, I mean, we take timeouts all the time if there's multiple cage grabs, if there's a groin shot, if someone loses their mouthpiece. I mean, Petr Yan the next night had a tape issue and someone had to come in and fix it. Like, it felt like we could have taken a beat before Goddard, like, I mean, he just like rushed him and just like screaming in his face. Like, it felt like Cedric was much calmer than Goddard was in the situation.
The argument against this, right, is that fighters should not be able to call their own timeouts,
Of
right?
course,
Fighters should not be able to say, "Hey, something's going on, stop the fight." Because what if the referee stops the fight and there was nothing going on and the opponent had momentum? In reality, though, we have to use the context of what's happening in the middle of the fight. Baki is standing there pointing at Cedric. They are both looking, and they're looking at each other, and they're looking at Goddard, and nobody is in danger. Baki is not in a position that it would be detrimental to remove him from. They are both looking for a solution here. They have come to the referee for a solution, and the solution was, I'm going to quickly jump in and end the fight, which I do not feel was the optimal solution. But
also, the second time, Baki was the one that was like, "What should we do, man?" Like, it wasn't like Cedric tried to re-stop it, and it's not like Baki was trying to engage. Like, they were both just staring at each other, and then Baki looked at Goddard and was like, "Should he like take it out? What should we do?" And then it was over from there.
it feels like 5 seconds of conversation could have saved.
Sure.
It was 1-1, and like that third round,
And getting real interesting.
Doumbé was having some good moments like early on in that third round. Like it's just such a bummer to see, and like who knows if we're gonna get a rematch? If we're ever gonna find out who actually.
I think they'll rematch them. At first, in the first round, you're like, "Oh man, Doumbé's the golden goose." And this was a terrible idea because he's going to get, you know.
Don't
After
rebook
that-
this.
after that
Please
first
do not
round.
rebook this.
After that first round, I was just like, what was PFL thinking with
Yeah.
this? But then he had a great bounce back second
Great
round.
bounce back. Actually,
1-1 on all three judges' scorecards. Felt
made
like
me
he was
more
starting to figure
interested
it
in the
out.
Doumbé story because we got to see more, tools in his toolbox.
Got taken down a lot, but was getting right back up.
Right.
Like it was.
Do not rebook this.
Nah,
We
you
saw
gotta
it.
rebook it.
We saw it. It was great. Cedric had a great second round. Onto a striker, and we continue the train moving forward. Absolutely do not make the same mistake twice.
Really?
This was a mistake booking from the beginning. Do not make the same mistake twice. That
you could make the case that it's like the perfect scenario because
perfect
he
scenario.
didn't actually lose, and
Well, I
it
mean,
was getting
perfect
a little
scenario-
squeaky bum time there.
No,
'cause
I mean,
he was gonna get.
I would argue though he was the one with the momentum, right? He had
I
dropped
do.
round one.
I think
and
he was gonna
He
win.
was the one who was on the upswing at that point. But I don't want to find out. I don't want to see
think
Baki
he's
again.
gonna win.
I don't want to see Baki having now seen Cedric again. Next striker, perfect, got it. He's going to get this overturned to a no contest.
Does he
and we
beat
move
Jason
on.
Jackson?
Hell no! What are you talking about?
I will also
So
say.
then what do you do with him?
So there's no levels between
That's it.
Prospect Baki and Jason Jackson. There's nobody in between there.
No, that's it.
I will say Doumbé handled it pretty well. Like he was
he was
didn't-
laughing and
the
stuff.
Didn't throw a fit or anything.
Yeah.
Like he was cool with it. And then the way that he took to Twitter afterward, and like I think the first tweet was like, "This is a thorny subject." And he made all sorts
He's
of
good.
jokes about it the entire time. Like I think the guy probably got like a combined 1 million likes on Twitter after the
Jeez.
fight.
Can we talk about the presence of mind to be like, do not remove that splinter from my foot. Get the camera over here, and I'm going to show you the
Get it
splinter.
closer.
Can we show
I
the
mean,
photo?
it's
We
just
have like a
perfect.
super zoomed in photo.
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
Because on the broadcast it
couple.
was hard to see, but then the photos really tell the story.
The visual is not great.
it's
We
it's
can go through it, like,
painful. Like, look at that thing.
it's-
Golly.
But people are like now doing this comparison like it's just like this speck on his toe, and then they're showing like the John Jones like toe hanging off. Like
Yeah, but that's the. Cedric was not trying to stop the fight. I think
that's what
people
I'm
are
saying.
confused.
He was not trying to quit. He was just like, "Yo, bro, can I just take this out real quick? Something was in this octagon and it is now in my foot. Can I take this out real quick? Like,
Yeah.
thank you." Like, it wasn't like he was like, "Yo, my toe's broken. Can I stop the fight?"
There's two reasons you'd want to jump in there, right? One, if he's actually hurt. If he's actually hurt, you'd want to stop the fight because you don't want him to get further hurt. 2, if he's being timid, right? Timidity. We just saw this in one championship.
Oh
with,
yeah, we got the red card.
Arjan Buller. Like, if he's not trying to fight.
Yeah.
Both of them were standing there looking for a solution to a problem. Neither one was concerned about not fighting, and neither one was hurt. I think it's a very clear case of stop, pause here. The tape, right? The tape, when the tape gets cut, because the tape is hanging loose, nobody's in danger of getting hurt. They're trying to prevent it from causing some kind of issue further down the line. The tape gets on somebody, gets in somebody's eyes, whatever the case may be, or they're able to pull on it and pull the glove. This is the exact same thing. Mouthpiece.
Like, yo.
Well, mouthpiece is a little more critical for the protection. I think the glove is a better example. But either way, sort it out. It takes 10 seconds, if that. We're going to pull this out, and we're going to keep fighting, and we're going to get a resolution to this fight. It felt like not the right outcome. But at the same time, by the rules, I don't think Mark Goddard did anything wrong either.
I spoke to a couple people who are in the know, and their feeling was they wish that there was a stern warning. And other than that, there's not much more that could be done. It's just a reminder, once again, the sport is still so young, just when you think that you've seen it all. I want to ask him this question. Did he walk to the ring or cage without shoes on, or did he have shoes on? Because I'd love to know how this happened, number one.
I would have to assume this happened in the middle of the fight, no?
Fuck, I don't know, but I get so squeamish with splinters, to be honest. So every time I look at that picture, and even us talking about this makes me so uncomfortable.
His picture makes you uncomfortable?
Oh my God. I don't even want to look
Seriously.
at it. Stop it.
It almost looks like he just has a freckle.
No, it kills. Have you ever had a bad splinter?
I have.
It's
I have, but like I can't believe this is
an
what
ingrown.
makes
I hate.
But then
I'm getting all
something
weak.
like this, like Joanne Wood, just like
No, that's fine.
This is fine.
I can
This is
stare
cool.
at that.
Let's
for
see, like
16 straight hours.
just a gigantic knee landed on
No.
Cheeto's chin.
No.
Nothing.
No, that's good.
Just-
That's nothing.
Benoit Saint Denis, like all the blood in his nose, just
Beautiful.
exploding
Looks
like
like
an
a walk in the
atomic
park.
bomb. Nothing.
Nothing.
But this is what makes you uncomfortable. Like, any speck on his toe.
No. This is awful. I feel like
This is
the shooting pain up the toe.
That's the thing. You can identify with that feeling,
okay.
but you're
Yeah,
not
see,
going to get it.
that's
Never
fair.
had your
get-
nose
That's fair.
exploded
That's
by
fair.
a punch.
That's fair.
Okay.
That's fair. That's fair. I just wish that he would have waited a beat, but now it makes things all that much more interesting. It's a
No rebooking. Move on. Do not do it.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think they're going to move on from it.
You think so? I actually think
Yeah.
they're going to rebook it.
Please, God. Please do not do this
I think
again.
they move on from it.
Please.
I think they take a minute.
For
and they're
me.
just like, yeah, we'll just move on. Good win
Don,
for Baki.
Don,
You have
please.
a win-win-win. Now it's like Cedric didn't lose. He had a decent performance. You can book him against someone else. Baki, he's the guy that beat Cedric. Still undefeated.
Ish.
I mean, yeah, of course, ish. There's an asterisk next to it.
It is wild. Isn't it wild though that
I don't
PFL
think that'll
Europe?
stand, by the way. I think there's a
think they-
chance that becomes a no contest.
Didn't they put out like a press release? PFL like sent an email. They were just like, and Baki defeated Cedric Doumbé by TKO.
Yeah.
Didn't like mention the splinter or anything.
Nah.
It's just straightforward.
But isn't it crazy that PFL Europe and maybe even like PFL Paris, if we want to make that into its own promotion, it's almost like a completely different thing than the rest of the PFL.
1,000.
You look at that like wide shot of the event, it's like, oh, this is like a UFC pay-per-view anywhere in the world. And then you go to another event and it's like there's 300 people there at some venue in Atlanta. Like, how could the two be so different? And if so, can you just do every event over there? Because it seems like that market is on freaking fire. It's a
Could, but then you'd become a regional French promotion.
No, I know. But listen, it doesn't seem
Paris
like a
Fighting
bad
League.
business to be in.
Yeah, make it the Paris Fighting League.
Yeah, you're right. It's good business
Paris
right now.
Fighting League.
20,000 people, Tony Parker doing speeches before the Cedric fight. And then, like, yeah, when they were in Saudi Arabia, they, like, zoomed out and it was just like, ooh, we should probably not zoom out again. There's, like, 1,500 people here.
Yeah.
If they put Cedric Doumbé on it, they're all coming. Book it.
Thanks for watching. We appreciate it very much. Hey, if you like this video, give us the old thumbs up. Subscribe as well. You can get many more of these videos on the channel, so please do that. We would love you forever if you did so.